Looks like we have just about a minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so it looks like Desiree, you already started the recording, so thank you. We're gathered here for the Municipal Audit Committee meeting for September 16th, 2020 from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And if you could do a call to order, Desiree, I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
Or I'm calling to order if you can go ahead and do introductions.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Allard.
Here.
Miss LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Falsey. Mr. Slivka.
Present.
And Miss Morrison.
Here.
Okay, you have quorum.
Thank you. All right, so new business, and Mr. or Alex, you said that Sam was going to go ahead and do the presentation?
Yes, so just as an introduction, BDO has been our auditor for a number of years, and the audit was completed this year on time, and Sam Thompson, working together with Joy Mariner, have led this engagement, so I will let Sam describe the results to you, and there is a presentation. I don't know if that can be shared, so he could walk through it.
Sounds awesome. Okay, go ahead, Sam. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you, members of the Audit Committee, for the opportunity to present here today. And thank you, Desiree, for pulling up the audit wrap-up document that we will go over. As Alex mentioned, we've been the municipality's auditor for several years now. I count 12 years, going back to our days as McCundy-Cottrell. We greatly value the relationship that BDO has had over those years with the municipality, and we look forward to several more years of partnership and being able to serve the Muni. I'd also like to just give a very specific thanks and gratitude to members of Controller Division and all the various accounting departments, ML&P, AWU, and the Port, Public Finance, for their hard work and assistance throughout the audit. This is a very large audit. It encompasses multiple months and many hours and hard work and sacrifice. So we greatly appreciate everyone's hard work throughout the process, especially given the events of this year with COVID-19 and pretty much doing the entire audit remote. And this is the first time that's ever happened. Normally we're on site at City Hall starting into February, beginning of March, and we're there until the end. We did not set foot for a single day at City Hall this year. I believe we had a couple weeks at ML&P and about half a week at AWU, and that was it. So we did 95% or so of the audit remote. So I greatly appreciate everyone in Public Finance, Controller Division, and all the various accounting departments for their work through those difficulties and made it a rather smooth process overall. So the document in front of you is we refer to as an audit wrap-up, and it includes various required communications that are set by our professional standard setters that need to be communicated to those charged with governance. That would be the Anchorage Assembly as well as the Audit Committee. So with that, Desiree, if you could go down to page 3. Thank you, perfect. We'll start with the status of the audit. And so we have completed our audit of the financial statements as well as the federal and state awards of the Municipality of Anchorage. So in addition to our financial statement audit, we also do what we refer to as a single audit. And we do separate single audits on both the federal funds that the municipality receives as well as state funding that is received. So those audits were all done for the year ended December 31st, 2019. They were all completed and we issued our opinions on July 27th, 2020. For both the financial statements as well as the federal and state single audits, we issued unmodified opinions. Now, an unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we can professionally provide. So keep in mind, though, we perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, or GAAS. And what that means is our audit is designed to provide reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance is not absolute assurance. So accordingly, our audit is designed to incorporates the concept of materiality. So there are certain balances and disclosures that we determined to be immaterial to the users of the financial statements, and thus were scoped out of our audit. That's that's very standard. It's virtually impossible to do an audit in accordance with absolute assurance. So reasonable assurance is the preferred professional standard in terms of our audit scope. We'd also like to remind you that the financial statements are the responsibility of management, and the BDO's responsibility exists in the independent auditor's report. Those 3 pages at the beginning of the financial statements are what we are paid to provide. Finally, on this page, we encountered no difficulties or limitations to the information that we needed to form our opinion. So there's no scope limitations, and there's no lack of data or information that we needed in order to provide a full and unmodified opinion. And just to reiterate one more time, management's cooperation was excellent throughout the entire audit and greatly contributed to the overall success. So Desiree, if you could go on to the next page, please. Thank you. So here we have this, again, the summary of the results of our audits. Now our audit encompassed many different procedures and focus areas. We would like to draw attention, though, to significant accounting estimates. They're one area of greater importance. You'll see on this page, we've listed the actual significant accounting estimates that are present in the municipality's financial statements. We've audited and reviewed all these estimates, and we're comfortable that they were all addressed and prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. If you could scroll down just a bit, Desiree, to the bottom of this page. Thank you. We are required to report any corrected or uncorrected misstatements that we come across in the performance of our audit, except for those that we consider to be clearly trivial. So we are reporting 3 corrected misstatements and 5 corrected disclosures that we brought to the attention of management. Each of these misstatements and disclosures is shown towards the end of this document in greater detail, and we'll get to that later on. And I'm happy to go through each of the corrected misstatements and disclosures and provide some additional information there. So the fact that they were corrected means that they were corrected and were and the financial statements were updated accordingly to reflect that. Now there were also 3 uncorrected misstatements, and as it states, they're uncorrected. However, these were determined to both be individually and in aggregate immaterial to the financial statements, and therefore did not impact our ability to issue an unmodified opinion. And each of these uncorrected misstatements is also shown at the end of our report, and I'll go over those towards the end of our presentation. Desiree, if you could move on to the next page, please. Thank you. Again, here we have, a summary of more results of our audit. We did not come across any significant unusual transactions that were not properly recorded into the financial statements. And I would like to draw your attention under the arrow there, new accounting pronouncements. There are technically 3, more like 2 accounting standards that went into effect in fiscal year 19 that the municipality adopted. The first is referred to as GASB Statement 84, and GASB, for those of you that may not know or be new to governmental accounting, stands for the Government Accounting Standards Board. It's the standard setters, which set the accounting principles that the municipality follows for financial statement reporting. So GASB Statement 84, fiduciary activities, relates to the accounting and financial reporting of the municipality's fiduciary funds, that being the police and fire retirement pension system funds, as well as the police and fire retirement OPEB funds. GASB Statement 88 deals with certain disclosures around long-term debt. And the last is GASB Statement 95. So GASB Statement 95 didn't actually change anything, any type of financial reporting like 84 and 88 did. However, 95 was issued by GASB in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And what 95 did, it postponed the implementation dates of several statements. The one that had the greatest impact on the financial reporting for this year was the postponement of GASB Statement 83, which would address how the municipality would have had to report their asset retirement obligation associated with municipal light and power. So those were the 3 new standards that went into effect. We audited and evaluated the municipality's adoption of these standards and agree that they are implemented correctly and had no issues or comments otherwise related to their adoption. Desiree, if you could go on to the next page, please. So here we've summarized 3 subsequent event note disclosures and are included in the financial statements. So subsequent events are those events that have occurred prior to the end of the reporting period, so after December 31st, 2019, but are of significance to the users of the financial statements. So the three here are the COVID-19 pandemic, the CARES Act funding, and also the sale of the electric utility. So with COVID-19, we had discussions with management, and we agree with the statement they ultimately settled on for inclusion in the financial statements. And what this statement here, or excuse me, this note here is drawing attention to the users of the financial statements is just the fact that COVID-19 had occurred, how it impacted the municipality, and what the potential adverse effects are going forward. This is just, again, full disclosure that this significant event has occurred and will have a financial statement impact. However, it is, as of the date of the financial statements, unknown what the overall impact will be, but is expected to be material and significant going into 2020 and potentially beyond. The CARES Act disclosure is similar, except that it's showing that the municipality did receive a significant amount of funding, well over $100 million through the CARES Act program. So this note briefly describes what the CARES Act is, how much the municipality received, and what the municipality expects to use those funds for in 2020. Finally, the last subsequent event disclosure that was included and shown here is the sale of electric utility. So whenever ML&P is finally sold to CEA, and those assets and other financial statement balances related to ML&P come off the municipality's books, it will greatly impact the financial reporting year over year from what readers of the muni's financial statements are accustomed to seeing. So given the size of that sale and the financial impact, we believe and management believed it was worthy of a disclosure in the statements. Desiree, if you could move on to the next page, please. So here's a real brief disclosure, just letting everyone know that we performed the majority of the audit. However, there was a small portion of the audit that was done by another firm, and this relates to the audit of the Anchorage Police and Fire Retirement System. We made reference to this other firm in our opinion. They issued an unmodified opinion over the Anchorage Police and Fire Retirement System. So accordingly, there is no adjustments necessary in the muni's financial statements or in our audit opinion to reflect this separate work. Desiree, next page, please. Thank you. So we'll talk briefly about internal controls over financial reporting. We are required by our professional standards to evaluate internal controls as they relate to financial reporting and evaluate the impact that they may have in our design of audit procedures over the financial statement balances themselves. However, we do not issue an opinion over the effectiveness of internal controls. If we do come across deficiencies in internal controls that we consider to be significant or material, we are required to report those to those charged with governance. As we note here, we did not come across any such deficiencies. We believe the municipality's internal controls are robust, strong, and in accordance with professional standards and best practices. All right, next page, please. Here's just a brief rundown of some other required communications. I won't go through all these, but basically what's shown here is letting those charged with governance know that we did not encounter any significant difficulties, or we're not aware that the municipality did any sort of opinion shopping or was consulting with outside firms for differences of opinions. All right, if you could move on, Desiree, thank you. Yeah, same here. We encountered no disagreements. All right, next page. Yeah, you keep going, Desiree. All right, so the next couple of pages, I won't spend too much time here, but this is just to let everyone know that there are additional accounting standards that have been implemented that will be effective in future periods. So there's statements coming out in 2020 and in subsequent years that will be required to be adopted by the municipality as they are applicable. GASB Statement 83 is one that if the ML&P sale is able to go forward and be finalized prior to the end of this year, there'll be no significant impact on financial reporting for the municipality. Next page, please. GASB Statement 89 will go into effect in 2021. And again, this will change how accounting for interest costs related to debt is tracked. Next page, please. GASB Statement 87 will have a very significant impact on the financial statements for the municipality. This statement refers to leases, both from the leasee standpoint and the lessor. So when the statement goes into effect, the municipality will be required to report on their balance sheet and statement of net position all leases, just not capital leases. So all operating leases as well will be required to be reported here. There are a few exceptions, most notably any lease that has, including all potential option periods, will last no longer than 12 months would be scoped out of this. Every other lease, though, will be accounted for under 87 and will likely add significant balances to the both statement of net position and the balance sheet. So we've had discussions in the past with members of Controller Division. They're very well aware of this new standard and are hard at work ensuring that the Muni will be ready to fully adopt the standard when it is required. These other statements, 91, 92, 93, even 97, aren't expected to have a very significant impact on the financial statements in future periods, but will of course be evaluated by management as well as BDO in greater detail going forward and making sure they're adopted appropriately. Okay, and same with 90. Statements 94, 96, not expected to have a significant impact at this point in time. However, we're in discussions with management, and we're continuing to monitor the various financial transactions that the municipality undergoes in future periods and whether or not these statements will have a material impact on the financial statements as a whole. So that's the majority of the audit wrap up. The next several pages is just a copy of the representation letter. Now this is a letter that's prepared by BDO, but it's given to management. Management reviews, and when they agree to the terms, they place it on Muni letterhead, sign and return to us. And basically this letter specifies who's responsible and for certain aspects of the audit and financial statements. We encountered no issues or disagreements with management in preparation and signing of the representation letter. So I won't go through all of it because it's a lot of legal jargon and doesn't provide too much value. But if you could move your way to the end of this document, Desiree, I will go over those corrected and uncorrected misstatements. All right, thank you. I apologize for the font being small here, but yeah, thanks for zooming in here. So the first page, we have the 3 corrected misstatements. Now the first 2 items, 1 and 2, overall, all 3 of these corrected misstatements, you'll notice in the far right column, had 0 impact on net position. What we mean is there is no impact to ending net position or fund balance. So these strictly had a balance sheet impact in terms of the assets, liabilities, deferred inflows and outflows, but no impact on any revenues or expenditures for the period. So overall, the 3 corrected misstatements that we have did not impact actual ending balances going forward into future periods. So the first 2 was basically to correct the incorrect grossing of deferred inflows and outflows of resources for pension and OPEB related items. Accounting standards require that certain items be reported net instead of gross, and so these 2 corrections were just to net these 2 items in the financial statements. And the third one was to reduce both accounts payable and prepaid expense related to the Water Utility Enterprise Fund. We actually came across this in our separate audit of AWU's financial statements. However, the Water Utility Fund is included in the municipal financial statements as a whole. Therefore, we also reported this corrected misstatement in the CAFR as well. All right, Desiree, next page, please. So here we have 5 corrected disclosures. So these were disclosures made into the notes of the financial statements. So the first had to do with there was a mathematical error in one of the calculations for lease payments. Unfortunately, it was a large amount, about $15 million, but when we came across it and brought it to the attention of management, they agreed and calculated what the change needed to be and updated the necessary note disclosure to properly state what future lease payments were. So that's the first correction. The second correction had to do with a piece of long-term debt the municipality has that's a variable rate loan. So the accounting rules are when you have a variable rate loan is for future interest payment disclosures, you are supposed to take whatever that variable rate is as of the end of the fiscal year and apply it to all future fiscal periods. That wasn't done. We brought this to the attention of management. It was fixed, it was corrected, and it impacted future interest payment disclosure by $2,376,000. So the third corrected disclosure had to deal with reporting certain investments held in the Regional Landfill Post-Closure Reserve Fund. So there was an investment worth $11,417,000 that was originally reported as a level 1 investment under fair value hierarchy. The investment was actually reported under net asset value instead of fair value. So it was misclassified in the note to the statements. Now the total dollar amount, the $11,417,109, that was never in question. That amount was always correct. This was purely a disclosure that was incorrect, and that it was held at the net asset value of the investment rather than fair value. So this wording change and presentation was corrected and is reflected in the investment notes to the financial statements. Disclosure number 4 that was corrected, it had to do with the related party transaction between the municipality and ACDA and the municipality's lease of the APD building on West 4th Avenue. There was a lease disclosure in there that was incorrect. It didn't show the 2019 lease payments that were made. This was adjusted as well. Another piece related to this was a related party transaction between the municipality of Anchorage and Anchorage Convention and Visitors Bureau. So as you're probably aware, the municipality does provide a portion of the hotel and motel tax revenues collected to ACVB to support that organization. It came out to just over $10 million this year. Again, the amount was reported correctly in the financial statements. However, it was not shown as a related party transaction in the notes to the statements. So that's what that corrected disclosure was made for. Finally, the last disclosure was just to report in the notes to the statements that the Port Enterprise Fund qualified as a major fund under qualitative purposes. It met the major fund criteria given its total assets compared to all the other funds in the municipality as a whole. It was originally reported in the notes to only be major for qualitative purposes, excuse me. So that was the correction there. All right, Desiree, next page, please. So to end with, we'll discuss the 3 uncorrected misstatements. And as I mentioned earlier, these statements were not corrected, so they're not reflected in the financial statements. However, both individually and in the aggregate, we believe that the event of not correcting these misstatements did not materially impact the financial statements. So the first you'll see has to do with the water fund, and it was an understatement of depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation that was not corrected, and so it affected the water enterprise fund by $156,000. The second one deals with the wastewater enterprise fund and was actually related to the same asset held by AWU that crossed over both the water and wastewater fund, but similar effect here. Depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation was understated in the wastewater fund by about $151,000. And finally, the third and final uncorrected misstatement has to do with the Police and Fire Retirement Trust, and that there was an error related to accounting for certain investments. So there's a 1/4 lag between what certain assets are reported as by the custodian versus what the Police and Fire Retirement System was reporting the balances at in their financial statements. So the variance here was about $745,000. And an overstatement of investment income in the current year and an understatement in prior years. So with that, that's I guess my prepared remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has at this time.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions that they want to ask, go ahead and just let Desiree know, and then we can go one by one. Does anybody have a question?
Ms. LaFrance does.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
Ms.
Desiree.
LaFrance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. And thank you to BDO and the administration for all this work. Obviously, very clearly, it's really detailed, and appreciate that you were able to pull this all together, especially having to work remotely. So thank you for your efforts there. So I have a question. I'm looking at page 6, results of our audit, subsequent events in the pandemic and CARES Act funding. and sale of the utility are listed there. And then earlier on the status of the audit, it was mentioned that unmodified opinions on financial statements on each major federal and state program were released in July. And so I was just curious, there's been quite a bit of public discussion about the CARES Act funding. And when you audit or review, when you're looking at the financial statements for these programs at the federal and state level, are you also looking at how like the municipality interprets the guidelines? Or could you say a little bit more about what goes into that? And I'm just noting on page 6, we believe the Muni's accounting and disclosures related to the COVID-19 pandemic, CARES Act funding, and the sale of the electric utility is appropriate. So if you could just talk a little bit about that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Certainly, thank you, and that's a great question. So the CARES Act for fiscal year into 2019 is simply a subsequent event in that the CARES Act wasn't even law until March of 2020. So in that regards, the only thing that was required was just a note disclosure explaining the amount received and the expected use of those funds going forward. So when we go to do our audit for 2020, however, we most likely, I would say 99.99% certainty that we'll be required to audit the CARES Act funding as what we refer to as a federal major program. And so every year the Federal Office of Management and Budget comes out with a compliance supplement, and it lists specific rules and guidelines for each federal program that our auditors are expected to audit and make sure that the organizations like the municipality who receive these funds and expend these funds are in accordance with the applicable rules and guidelines. So just given the amount that the municipalities received and expended both now and through the end of this program in December of 2020, it very well will be a major program, and we will audit it in 2020. And the tests that we perform will be in accordance with what is outlined in that compliance supplement and what we are expected to audit, and it will incorporate test work regarding the allowable activities, allowable costs, reporting, and just overall accounting for those funds in accordance with federal standards and generally accepted accounting standards.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Would the results then be in July of 2021?
That's certainly our goal, if not sooner. Yes.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any follow-up questions that they would like to ask Sam?
Mr. Rivera has a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, I want to thank BDO and the various department staff who helped make this happen. It's actually quite impressive in the middle of an audit that this was able to be done on time. Along the similar vein of questions that Ms. LaFrance asked, do we expect there to be any new GASB statements coming out as related to these subsequent events detailed on page 6?
Again, a great question. So the GASB issued what they refer to as a technical bulletin around COVID-19, and it didn't come out with any new accounting standards related to accounting for CARES Act funds and expenses related to the pandemic. It just provided additional clarification and links to prior guidance and accounting rules about how the funds should be accounted for. So with that, the actual financial reporting for COVID-19 and the CARES Act funding, the rules and guidance, it's already out there. However, the federal rules related to CARES Act funding, as you're probably aware, they're out there and what the Treasury's released so far and their FAQs and their limited guidance. And we haven't received the official compliance supplement that reflects on what auditors are expected to audit in accordance with the CARES Act program. We expect to receive that towards the end of this month or early in October.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask? Okay, So does anybody have any other business that they would like to discuss?
Madam Chair, this is Alex Slivka. I would just add another thank you to BDO and also to recognize the controllers team, which is currently led by Molly Morrison, who's been our controller since the end of 2019. That for most of 2019, Pam Ellis was the acting controller. She has been deputy controller for a number of years. So it goes without saying that both of those women did a phenomenal job in shepherding the accounting of the finances of the municipality. So I just want to thank them again.
Thank you, Mr. Slivka. Does anybody else have any other comments or any other business they'd like to say? Okay, so can we
Madam
move
Chair?
on to old business? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Actually, a question is, and maybe it's under old business, the P card review.
I'm probably going to hit up the P card review on a different committee meeting, just because I don't think I have enough time to go over everything. Unless, did you just want to make a quick comment?
Well, I did have some follow-up questions, and I can certainly put them in an email to the administration, if that's preferable.
Yeah, I already spoke to Desiree. We're going to set up another committee meeting just because I think there's a little bit more, there's quite a bit to go over. And so I just wanted to be solely focused on the P cards. Are you okay with doing it that way?
Sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I probably set it up for next week too, so it's going to be quicker than not. All right, so if nobody has anything other than that, is there any old business anybody would like to discuss? All right, is there any comments anybody would like to say? All right, so then Desiree, can we open it up? Is there anybody for audience participation on the phone?
I do see a couple of numbers. I think a few of them are internal. But if you are on the phone, please *6 to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and you'll have your 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's Eugene, but I'll be very brief. Okay, very, very brief. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Haberman.
Yeah, go ahead. And you're good.
Okay, it's going to be real short question thing, and I appreciate the presentations that were there on the line and the website. Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much for the public to this. But you're going to have a meeting in a couple of days in LUSAC Assembly Chambers, and it's a special meeting. Starts at 10 o'clock. My concern is that you open up the assembly chambers. Please make sure that those chambers are open for the public to get in there, because of you need to make sure that before you start that meeting, a few minutes before, let those people in. That's all I have to say, and just a reminder, because there's a place for public to be there before you go into executive session. Thank you.
Thanks, Eugene. We'll go ahead and make sure that that's open for our audience participation, and thank you for the reminder. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak up? And it just hit star. Is it *6, right, Desiree?
Yes, ma'am, *6.
And if anybody wants to go ahead and chime in, they can. All right, Desiree, does it look like there's anybody else?
I think the rest of the call-in numbers are employees.
Okay. So are we okay to go ahead and adjourn unless anybody has last-minute comments? I'm open to that. All right, it looks like nobody has any other comments, Desiree.
All right.
Okay, we can adjourn if everybody's okay. Thank you for everybody coming in. Thank you for the brief. I really appreciate it, Sam. It was well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.